Hello, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to this, the top 8 of Pro Tour Ixalan. I'm Tim Willoughby, joined by Paul Cheon, and our first two sets of quarterfinalists are ready and raring to go in the feature match area. Let's head down and kick things off for these two first quarterfinals here at Pro Tour Ixalan. Hello and welcome to this, the first set of quarterfinals here at Pro Tour Ixalan. I'm here with Paul Cheon, and we have a pretty diverse set of matchups to see in our feature match area. The one we're going to be kicking it off, though, with is, if anything, the most combo-rific of the decks that are in our feature match area. We're going to get a chance to see Pascal Maynard. There you see him from Team Massdrop West. He is on a blue-white God-Pharaoh's gift deck, and facing off against him, the number 6 seed, free agent in the team series, Piotr Glogowski, and he is playing 4-color Energy, one of the decks that we've seen throughout this tournament, but his list a little bit different from some of the others we've seen, Paul.
Yeah, he's got a pretty teched-out version. He decided to play 0 copies of Glorybringer, and instead has chosen to play 2 copies of Sky Sovereign to go along with the Scarab God as the 5-mana threats of choice for his deck. And I think the reason being is the Sky Sovereign is actually very, very good in the mirror. I think Piotr expected lots of kind of Teamer Energy decks in the format, and Sky Sovereign dodges both Chandra and Glorybringer, and is just a really punishing way to deal with Planeswalkers.
Well, the early stage of this game, it may look like Pascal Maynard is some sort of an anemic blue-white beatdown deck, but that's really not what he's aiming to achieve. Minister of Inquiry's there on turn 2. That will help him get cards in the graveyard, and ultimately, he's trying to find and get into play a copy of God Pharaoh's Gift. Once he gets that going, well, he can get some very large creatures out of the graveyard each and every turn, use them to win the game. In the meantime, though, well, Piotr Glogowski, he's got the value plan of 4-color Energy very much on the way. Servant of the Conduit on turn 2 could spell some big threats in future turns.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest reasons why Pascal decided to play the blue-white God Pharaoh's Gift is because he feels like he has a favorable matchup here. This is probably the deck that had the biggest target in its back going into the tournament, and he was, a lot of decks have actually chosen to play less copies of Abrade in their energy shells, and for that reason, this deck has just risen in popularity. And Pascal's just super linear. You look at his deck, he's only playing 16 creatures. Most God Pharaoh's Gift decks in the past have played lots of creatures because traditionally they've used the card Gate to the Afterlife, which requires 6 creatures in your graveyard to fetch God Pharaoh's Gift. But Pascal Maynard is on a turbo version where he's looking to mill through as many cards in his graveyard as possible and then use the card Refurbish to get back God Pharaoh's Gift.
2 copies of Minister of Inquiries early on.
Wow.
A pretty great start for Pascal Maynard in terms of enacting his game plan. That will mean that he's able to find the key cards he needs that much faster because, as it turns out, cards in the graveyard about as good as cards in hand, and in some cases better for Pascal Maynard here.
Yeah, and normally, look at this. This is a great start from Piotr, right? He's got the Servant into the Bristling Hydra. He's got plenty of energy, but Pascal's blockers for days. He's got that Sacred Cat. That buys him a turn. He's got double Minister of Inquiries, and he already has a Refurbish in hand. And look at this. There's a God Pharaoh's Gift in the graveyard. So now he's going to Refurbish and get this Angel of Invention into play right away.
Yeah.
Turn 4.
God Pharaoh's Gift getting into play on turn 4, it's naturally a 7-drop. This is not the turn that you would expect or hope to see it in play if you're on the other side of the table. And once it's in play, well, it just generates a crazy amount of advantage. At the beginning of every combat step on your turn, you can exile a creature in your graveyard and put it into play as a 4/4 black zombie with haste. And the absolute hallmark card to put into play is this Angel of Invention. It's got flying, it's got lifelink, it's got vigilance.
He just put a 6/6 flying vigilance lifelink creature that pumps his entire team in play on turn 4.
You know what? It's also got haste.
Oh,
so
right.
he also gets to attack in.
Minor details.
Look, Glogowski here going to 13, and if Pascal can manage to get another Angel of Invention in play on the next turn, so if he can get it into his graveyard thanks to those Minister of Inquiries, animate it using the God Pharaoh's Gift, this could be all lights out for game 1.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And look, even if Piotr's actually not skimping on Abrades. He's playing 3 copies of Abrade in his main deck. But even if he has an Abrade here, he still needs to find an answer for that 6/6 flying vigilance lifelinker.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't even have good sets of attacks here. Normally when you've got a Bristling Hydra, you feel like you ought to be able to get stuck into the red zone. When it was just a cat in the way, you're like, okay, fine, I'll make that attack. But now he's very much sort of on the defensive, and that's not really where this 4-color energy deck wants to be. Just a Rogue Refiner here, digging to try and find an answer and hoping it's going to be good enough.
Right. And right now, Pascal can even just put the Sacred Cat in the way And then it'll eternalize as a 5/5 lifelinker thanks to the Anthem effect from the Angel of Invention here. Piotr really needs to find an abrade here off that Rogue Refiner. Maybe this is a Harness Lightning that would get the Angel off the board.
There we see just carefully going through all of the details of exactly how much energy is going to get spent there. Let's have a look at what's going on in Piotr Glogowski's hand, because ultimately, thus far, we've kind of been focusing on what's on the battlefield. And to be honest, this is not necessarily the set of answers that he was looking for in total.
Some spot removal spells, probably not quite going to be good enough. Also, Sky Sovereign, we talked about how this is a great tech card for the mirror, right? Well, turns out Sky Sovereign not really good at dealing with eternalized creatures. 3 damage just doesn't get it done against all these 4/4s.
I like this.
Oh,
casting an Angel Invention, milling another Angel Invention to be able to get back with Godfarer's Gift. That means that all the other creatures on the battlefield are getting at least +2/+2. That Angel of Invention has got +1/+1 from its friend. These huge attacks coming from Pascal Maynard here. Big problems for Piotr Glogowski. He's tapped out. He's just got to try and protect himself as much as he can from damage here. But just look at this board advantage. I think it might be time to just switch our advantage bar across just a little bit here.
Yeah, and also that Angel of Invention in play, the one that's currently non-eternalized, it's not a 4/3, it's a 5/4. This Sky Sovereign can't even deal with that one that's on the board.
Yeah. So many different challenges for Piotr Glogowski here if he's going to get out of this game one.
He could probably draw 3 cards here, and it probably won't be enough.
Now, these matches in our top 8 are all best of 5. We will have the first 2 games will be pre-sideboarded. So at least for now, it will be a matter of if Glogowski's got good answers in his sideboard, he's going to have to weather another whole game of these game 1s before he gets a chance to bring them to bear. As things stand here, Pascal Maynard making some big attacks. That enough for Piotr Glogowski to scoop up his cards. Game 1 going to the Canadian from Team Massdrop West, that being Pascal Maynard.
Wow, what a start. That was just the ideal start, right? Well, turn 1 Minister, mill yourself. Creature, mill yourself. Turn 4 Godfarer's Gift, Angel of Invention. That's just exactly what this deck wants to do.
Well, our first game in the books for these quarterfinals. We've got plenty more games to go. Do not go anywhere. We will be back very soon with more Magic. But first, these messages.
Somebody made a pitch for Vampire Conquistadors, and that was the very bare bones nugget of Ixalan coming into being. If all you're doing is playing the card game, you're seeing that world through a bunch of tiny little windows. The art book is a view into who these characters are, what they're doing here, how these cultures fit together.
I mean, I'm super proud of this world. James and I both worked on it really closely, so I think it's going to be amazing, and I think once it finally hits, the fans are going to be blown away.
Play Standard to win special Standard Showdown prize boosters. Ixalan Standard Showdown events are hosted by local stores every day of the week except Friday. Find a location to play at magic.wizards.com/Standard Showdown.
Hello and welcome back to this, our quarterfinal coverage here at Pro Tour Ixalan. I'm Tim Willoughby, joined by Paul Chion, and well, we saw one game already down, that going to Pascal Maynard against Piotr Glogowski. We have actually had another game already finished, that being the first game between John Rolf and Christian Hauck. Those guys shuffling up for their game 2, and it's a matchup of Ramanap Red in the hands of that man, John Rolf, up against Teamer Energy from Christian Hauck, and the red deck won in game 1. You know, that's why they call it red deck wins. In this case, Ramanap Red. There you see Christian Hauck shuffling his Teamer Energy list. Let's have a quick talk through how this matchup goes as these players just about to start their second game. These two lists, pretty familiar to anyone that's been playing a fair amount of Standard lately. No gigantic departures from the norm in either list. And in terms of successes, we've seen one win a Pro Tour fairly recently. We've seen one win a World Championship. These, I think, going into the tournament were two of the decks that everyone was looking out for.
Yeah, and I think generally how the matchup plays out is I think I'd rather be on the Teamer side, but by a little bit. It's not a huge edge, and play draw is incredibly important. I've seen mono red decks with great draws just on the play, just be able to match just fantastic draws from the Teamer deck. You know, 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop, or 1-drop, 2-drop, 2-drop, 1-drop. Hazaret was just going to end lots of games. And one of the most important cards in this matchup is the card Whirler Virtuoso. And if you don't draw it and you're on the draw, the Teamer deck is in a lot of trouble.
Worth noting, of course, that based on the seedings of this event, John Rolf of Team Metagame Guru's Moon, he broke serve. He was starting on the draw and was able to win his game 1. Potentially a very big deal because it means that even if it works out that things go poorly for him here, he potentially gets another shot at more games on the play after sideboarding. Kicking things off with the Bomat Courier here. That was a big player in his game 1, able to attack with it pretty much for the entire course of the game. And while 1 point a turn doesn't sound like a lot, those points add up pretty quickly, and at some point you can cash it in for a lot of cards.
Right. And Christian here with a turn 2 Long Tusk Cub, but you know, it's pretty vulnerable here. It will die to basically any burn spell that John has available to him right now.
Yeah, and John does have access to 4 copies of Shock in addition to Lightning Strike, in addition to a Braid. He doesn't necessarily need to take a big break on his other development. If he's got another 1-drop here, that would be ideal.
Wow.
Soulscar Mage coming down. Very efficient use of mana. Gets to attack him with that Bomat Courier again. And at some point, it means that if he runs out of gas in hand, he can just draw a whole new hand.
And this is the turn. Does Christian have a Whirler Virtuoso? The thing is, Rogue Refiner is a fine card, but it does die to every single removal spell that John can have. So John can just continue to apply the pressure here. So I mean, if John has another way to break through, I mean, and then that Bomat Courier is going to have 3 counters underneath it as well.
Even just the prowess on Soulscar Mage means that blocking doesn't look great for Rogue Refiner. It's not necessarily doing more than spinning wheels for Christian Hauck at this point as he just tries to navigate his way to the mid and late game. And it's worth noting that the Teamer deck, once it hits the mid and late game, does have much more powerful cards to bear.
Right. So looks like John has a lot of options. And yeah, he does have the removal spell here. And that's 3 more points of damage.
Another copy of Soulscar Mage. Gets an extra point in thanks to the prowess on Soulscar Mage, so 3 points coming through here, plus the point from Sunscorched Desert. Even though he's been spending spells on killing his opponent's creatures, John Rolf doing a great job of whittling down Christian Hauck's life total in these early turns.
And keep in mind, he's been using resources to get creatures out of the way, but he's got that Bomat Courier. There are currently 3 counters underneath that thing. He can just use all of his burn spells, then cash in that Bomat Courier for potentially 4 cards next turn. Ooh, but Christian Hauck found the Whirler Virtuoso here. So he just needs to survive and get that Virtuoso online, and also hope that John Rolf does not have a Hazaret this turn. If he goes land Hazaret, it's going to be really, really rough.
Well, it looks like Hazaret not necessarily a worry, but John Rolf is going to be able to empty his hand near as damn it, and that means that he will then be able to draw additional cards with his Bomat Courier, and as is his wont from here on in. Out of spells, it's all creatures from here on, but Earthshaker Kenra can come down, mean an extra attacker. Unfortunately, the power on Rogue Refiner means that the ability not kicking in here.
Yeah, so John actually has a pretty interesting choice here. So he drew a land for the turn. What he can do here is play an Earthshaker Kenra and then attack and try to figure out what attacks he wants to make. He can decide to just attack with everything and then crack the Bomat Courier and trade in his Kariza for 4 cards. If Christian decides to block the Bomat Courier, or he can just choose to deploy both the threats he has in his hand.
And of course, if he activated the Courier here and drew into a Shock, That would be fantastic.
Huge.
He'd be able to get rid of the Rogue Refiner as a blocker entirely and potentially just go off to the races here in these early turns.
That is the only one-mana removal spell that he has in his deck to trigger the prowess on the Soulscar mages, and he's already used one of the shocks, so it's pretty unlikely. But it is still pretty tempting here because he does have a good opportunity here to, again, cash that, crack the Bomat Courier here and draw 4 cards. He needs to find Hazrets. He wants some removal spells.
Yeah, this is a complicated old turn here for John Rolf.
Is he attacking with everything?
He's going for it. Let's see what Christian Hauck has to say about that. In principle, there is 1 Magma Spray in Christian Hauck's main, so that 1 red mana that he has available could mean a spell here.
Yeah, I'm going to put my creature in front of that Bomat Courier and just kind of force John Rolf to sack that Bomat Courier. John did take some time there, so the chance of John having a spell here. Actually, it's very unlikely that John has a spell here. I take that back, because if he did, he likely would have casted pre-combat so that the Rogue Refiner wouldn't have blocked. So I would be pretty tempted to put this in front of the Bomat Courier.
Now, Christian Hauck does have the Whirler Virtuoso in hand, and he's done a good job of generating energy in the early turns of this game. Likewise, he's also got the option of casting Glorybringer next turn, which is another way that he can potentially start cleaning this board up. But, yeah,
does he find a shock for some extra damage? He does not. And the Karizev, actually playing the Karizev there makes a lot more sense because the Earthshaker Kenra does have Eternalize. And wow, that's a lot of Soulscar mages, and he did just draw a ton of cards. So any spell he plays, this Soulscar mage is threatening a lot of damage.
We will get the hand updated for you on John Rolf soon enough. In the meantime, though, let's see what Christian Hauck has to say about this game. He's now hit the point where he's got enough mana that he can really start stringing some plays together here.
Yeah, it's a pretty tough spot, but we did see that he does have that Whirler Virtuoso in hand. Oh, and he has a Harness Lightning. So I think I'd be tempted to just try to stabilize the board here with the Whirler Virtuoso, because these 5-mana threats don't seem like they're going to be impactful enough here. The 3 Soulscar mages, though, are very, very scary. Yeah, Whirler Virtuoso will give Christian Hauck access to 9 energy, so he does have the ability to make 3 Thopters here.
And thinking about the power of those Soulscar mages, looking over on the other side of things, actually, it's all creatures in hand for Rolf here. John Rolf will have to do things the old-fashioned way. Earthshaker Kenra does mean that he can potentially limit the blocks a little bit.
John Rolf really wants a 1-mana card here so that he can attack with the Hazoret the Fervent this turn. He can play the Ramunap Ruins and the Hazoret, but he needs a one drop to be able to drop it, and he did not find it.
That one of the things that the Ramunap Red deck lost in the set rotation. Not too much, but Falconwrath Golger was a nice 1-drop to have in the deck. In return, it got to have Lightning Strike, which is certainly a very potent removal spell, but right now, John Rolf would love a 2-1 for 1.
Right. It did lose the 1-drop, so now you can't go up to like 10 or 11 copies of the 1-drop, but it still has access to the 8. Lightning Strike is a big upgrade, and it still has the most important card. You have Hazoret and Ramunap Ruins, and I think those are the 2 key cards to actually make this deck function. It gives you that late-game inevitability, and that is a tool that often red decks didn't have in the past. You get flooded, it's okay. I pitch them, and still I can just get you with my lands.
Really doesn't feel fair when the deck running lots of 1-drops gets to do great things when it has a few lands and lots of spells, also gets to do great things when it has lots of lands and not so many spells.
Right. Also, you get to play a 4-mana, 5/4 hasting indestructible creature. Pretty hard to deal with.
It's true.
Wow. So this is actually pretty fortunate for John Rolf that Christian actually used the Harness Lightning on the Karizev because he actually drew another copy this turn.
It lets him be much more mana efficient. Legend rule no longer a big concern.
But John Rolf actually does not have a good attack here, I don't think. So I think he's likely just going to play a Karizev this turn, and then next turn just play the Hazoret and try to finish the game that way. He is also 1 land away from eternalizing the Earthshaker Kenra in his graveyard, because I believe he has a Ramunap Ruins in hand.
I mean, if John Rolf attacks here, then he's essentially Hollywooding the fact that he's got at least 1 spell so he can trigger prowess here.
Right. But Christian Hauck is in one of those situations where it's just like, it's really hard for me to play around the spell. I'm already at 12 life. You've put a lot of pressure on me. I'm probably just going to block in a way where you probably don't have a spell.
The metagame guru Moon player just figuring out the details of what he wants to do on this turn. Just a small attack coming through here.
And I think John Rolf is just thinking, well, you know, this Earthshaker Kenra really doesn't do a whole lot anyways. I'm fine with having this card just in my graveyard because, look, I'm on 5 lands. Any draw is a great draw for me.
It's a great, great position to be in where you love to see a land, you love to see a spell. Just the top of your deck is your friend at that point.
Yeah, and Christian just desperately trying to hold on here and just trying to stabilize, And boom, Sky Sovereign.
Love it. The big console flagship coming into play, dealing 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. That takes down Kari Zev, and of course, once it starts getting crude, it really doesn't take that long for Sky Sovereign to just close out games. 6 power in the air, tough for a lot of decks to deal with.
And you're going to see just how much time this Whirler Virtuoso is actually going to buy for Christian Hauck. Christian Hauck has the Thopter here to chump block the Hazoret the Fervent, and Christian can turn the corner and get him for a good amount of damage with that Sky Sovereign. He's got a Glorybringer in hand. The combination plus of Sky Sovereign plus Glorybringer does put John Rolf on a 2-turn clock.
You called it. It was all about this Whirler Virtuoso. It's been an absolute stop sign for a lot of what John Rolf's had going on. The first 8 damage came very easily, but the remaining 12 is looking quite problematic at this point for John Rolf.
Yeah, and is Christian going to just try to close the door here as quickly as possible? He does have that Glorybringer. Oh, no, he's got a Confiscation Coup.
This also qualifies.
That qualifies as an answer to Hazoret.
I mean, the good thing about using a Confiscation Coup on Hazoret, yes, for Christian Hauck to be able to attack with Hazoret, a few slightly unusual things to have to happen. He has to get down to low cards in hand. But it means that he gets to protect his life total from Hazoret's ability. And Hazoret's ability, yes, it's got a bit of work to do from 12 life, but there are burn spells in John Rolf's deck that can burn that down pretty quickly.
Right.
Life total's pretty close here. Slight advantage at this point for Christian Hauck, though, just because he has been able to weather the early storm. And once we get to these mid and late stages of the game, that is where the Team Energy deck really just gains a huge amount of traction.
Yeah, Christian's developed a huge board. That Confiscation Coup was a huge turnaround. That Sky Sovereign's done a lot of work as well. So, out of energy, so no more Thopters to be made. But Christian is sitting at a relatively comfortable 12 life here. What is John Rolf working with here?
I mean, the worst creatures on Christian's side of the board beat the best creatures on John Rolf's side of the board right now. The life totals are pretty close. I mean, if you're John Rolf, in your perfect world, you want to have Christian Hauck down to like 8, 6 life, and then be when you're at this cleanup stage.
Yeah.
12 is a big ask for this red deck, even though it does have the likes of Lightning Strike, the likes of Ramanat Ruins to help with a little bit of reach.
Yeah. So how many cards does Christian? Can he actually attack with the Hazoret? Let's see. He's working with 3 cards in hand. So John Rolf, I think, is just going to go for the really aggressive play here. He's got the Earthshaker Kenra, the Soulscar Mages, and that's 9 damage total. And I think, is that just lightning strike to the face?
He's putting himself in a position where he can potentially take this.
Okay, that was a lightning strike to the face, but Christian Hauck now just needs to cast a Glorybringer, and that should be the game. He can use the Hazoret the Fervent to crew the Sky Sovereign, along with the Glorybringer, plus the Rogue Refiner and the Whirler Virtuoso. That's 10, 13, 15 damage.
Just 1 mana up for John Rolf. That only represents shock, which is good enough to deal with Rogue Refiner, but it's just a matter of
But
whether...
if he had the shock, Christian would have already been dead. So you can't put him on shock here.
So Christian Hauck will have to spend his final point of energy in order to cast this Glorybringer. Don't think he's going to mind too much.
I've never seen a Hazoret crew a Sky Sovereign before.
Yeah, not normally one for driving, but you know what? Put her behind the wheel, she can get the work done.
Turns out she's a pretty good pilot.
Squares things up there. It is 1-1 as these two go to their sideboarded games, and we're going to get a chance to see one more pre-sideboard game before we get onto our sideboard options. We get to jump back and see a little bit of action between Pascal Maynard and Piotr Glogowski over on our other table there. Godfarer's Gift against a slightly different version of our energy list. So Pascal Maynard picked up the Game 1 win. He was the higher seed, so he got to play first. This time around, we're going to get to see Glogowski taking the first play of the game, and we will find out whether or not that ends up proving to be decisive. Heard a little bit from Glogowski prior to this top 8 match starting that he said, well, how do I feel about this matchup? Good, but it gets better after sideboarding.
Yeah, I actually don't think it's that great for him game 1. I think I'd rather be on Pascal's side. But after sideboard, Piotr does have a lot of pretty nifty tools for this matchup. And Pascal with the ideal turn 1 play, turn 1 Minister of Inquiries, try to fill up that graveyard,
I
get some
believe he
Champion
has
of Wits.
at least 1 copy, maybe 2 copies of Refurbish in
Okay,
hand.
so we need some God Pharaoh's gifts.
Yeah. He's got some energy to work with. He just needs to deploy it in order to get cards in the graveyard. Does Glogowski have a way of dealing with Minister of Inquiries? It seems crazy to have to
and
use removal.
Piotr kept a 2-lander. But he does have a couple of Long Tusk Cubs. Those, if left unchecked, can just win the games by themselves. But
It's a 2-lander that's 2 basic lands as well. So
right.
we have a 4-color energy deck that is currently having to play with just green and black mana. No blue spells, no red spells to work with. Pascal Maynard just needs to try and enact his game plan here, and he should be in good shape. More copies of Minister of Inquiries. This means that
Wow, he gets
there will be a lot of cards in the graveyard by turn 4.
right. He's got that refurbish in hand, and he has 3 energy. And with both the ministers, he can put 9 cards in his graveyard.
This has to be a good spot for Pascal Maynard here.
Yeah.
Even if Piotr Glogowski feels like his match after sideboarding is a good one, having to win 3 games on the bounce after sideboarding is a big ask of any deck in any Magic format.
Yeah. So look at this. No blocks from Pascal. That's 5 damage, and Piotr has access to 4 energy. But does he draw land? No land. God Pharaoh's Gift.
Nope, Champion of Wits in the graveyard thus far as the only creature, which will prove relevant at some point.
All right. I think we're gonna see some main phase mills here.
This is the time for
God
it.
Pharaoh's Gift.
Nope, just a Sacred Cat.
Sacred Cat, almost as good. Oh,
There's
the
the
last card! There it is!
Glacial Fortress coming to play untapped. Refurbish bringing in God Pharaoh's Gift. Now, in terms of creatures to get back, I think that we're likely to see a Champion of Wits here because that's the one that's going to help fill the graveyard still further for future God Pharaoh's Gift activations.
Yeah, Pascal is at a pretty comfortable 13 life, so I would probably look to get the Champion of Wits because he wants to dig and find an Angel of Invention and put that into his graveyard.
Champion of Wits, it will let him draw 4 cards. He'll have to discard 2 from his hand following that.
Oh, and he found the Angel!
Angel of Invention, that will be the first card he discards. The second one, not so big a concern in many respects, though any creatures that are in his hand, he will very happily dump into the Grumper at this point.
And again, this is just the absolute ideal start for the white-blue God Pharaoh's Gift deck. Turn 1, Minister of Inquiries. Turn 4, Refurbish, God Pharaoh's Gift with the target.
I mean, you've got to feel sorry
Both
for
games.
Piotr here. This was
Yeah.
a rough draw for him anyway, and then to see his opponent's deck basically enacting its game plan flawlessly. There was no need for any card drawing spells at any point for Pascal in order to piece together
Just
his
had it
plan.
all, had all these. Now, Piotr did find a Spire Bluff Canal here. Let's see if he actually has a card like in a Braid to deal with the God Pharaoh's Gift. It doesn't look like he does.
Yeah, this is a hand that, as it turns out, is not very well set up to deal with exactly what Pascal has going on. He does have a Harness Lightning, which he will have plenty of energy to use if he wants to kill off the first Angel of Invention. But the problem with Pascal Maynard's deck for him is that he's just generating so much value so consistently that it becomes very, very difficult for him to keep up, especially when he's so far behind on lands.
So now Piotr has Harness Lightning, which he could use as effectively a pump spell.
Yeah, you got me.
Yeah, he's just like, this is just too much, way too much.
All right, so
Wow.
these guys are going to be going to their sideboards soon enough. We'll get a chance to talk about those sideboards momentarily, but I believe that we may have the sideboarding getting close to completed on the other side of things. The other players just finishing up their sideboarding there. All right, let us talk a little bit about sideboarding. We've just seen Pascal Maynard's match against Piotr Glogowski, and there are some very interesting sideboarding options on there. So let's talk through a little bit about what we may see coming out of the sideboard. Firstly, for Piotr.
So taking a look at Piotr, he has a lot of cool options. He's got a couple of copies of Deathgorge Scavenger, which can slowly chomp away at the creatures in the graveyard. And Pascal is just looking to fuel his graveyard as quickly as possible. And he's also got a couple of copies of River's Rebuke, which is super powerful. And I'm really curious to see if he actually wants to bring it into this matchup.
Interesting stuff. So that's,
River's Rebuke!
I mean, You get to bounce all those tokens, you get to bounce the Godfarer's Gift, you get to basically do everything you possibly hope to get into a game that you're currently out of. We are going to get a chance to see the other match first, though. I think they're finishing sideboarding a little quicker. They finished their game a little sooner. So let's talk a little bit about how the landscape of Mono Red versus regular Teamer energy goes after sideboarding.
Yeah, so for this matchup, I think it's just pretty straightforward. This matchup, you know, these players have got to play this matchup 100 times over. Taking a look at Christian Hauck's sideboard, he's got a copy of a Braid. He's got a couple of Chandra's defeats. I imagine those cards are going in. I think that's honestly about it. I imagine he's going to probably look to shave some of the top end cards in his deck, maybe a card like Chandra. But yeah, taking a look at the sideboard here, we have that Braid and we have the 2 Chandra's defeats. None of the other cards really seem like you really want them, except for maybe the Confiscation Coup. The Confiscation Coup is a little bit clunky, but it is an answer to Hazoret the Fervent. So I could see him bring that in. Now, I see that 1 copy of Blazing Volley, but when you look at the Ramunap Red deck, there's not a ton of 1 toughness creatures in the deck. You have Earthshaker Kenra, you have Bomat Courier, but I think Christian Hauck put this in his sideboard more as a concession to the fact that there might be some crazy mono-white Vampires deck.
I mean, there was a crazy mono-white Vampires deck, so it's great call by Christian, though admittedly perhaps not so much for this matchup. On the other side of things, for John Rolf, he has the option to potentially go a little bit larger after sideboarding if he so chooses. There's Glorybringer in there, there's Chandra in there, there's Aethersphere Harvester if he potentially wants to, and Pia Nalar, if he's playing against 1-for-1 removal, is kind of a nice way of hedging, putting a couple of threats on the battlefield using just a single card. Be interesting to see whether or not he wants to go low, or if he wants to try and fight a slightly longer game.
Yeah, so a sideboard strategy that I've seen a lot from these red players is on the play, you still want to be aggressive. You want to apply the pressure, keep your curve low, and finish the game off with Hazoret. On the draw, things change. I think people just, because the Teamer Energy deck can just kind of flood the board with a bunch of different creatures, I think on the draw, you board in your Chandra, you board in your Glorybringer, and try to go a little bit bigger and just kind of win with those more expensive spells. And
this is the reason why John Rolf winning that game 1, breaking serve, if you will, he was on the draw in game 1 and was able to get the win. This is one of the reasons that that's so big. It means that for this first sideboarded game, he's getting to go first. If things go well, fantastic. But he knows that he's going to get at least a couple of chances to go first with these sideboard cards, and that could be one of the deciding factors in this quarterfinal.
Absolutely, I totally agree. And I'm really curious to see how, what John's sideboard plan is on the play here in game 3.
We can see Christian Hauck there just finishing up the shuffling of John Rolf's deck. These guys very keen to get their game on. As much as our top 8 is untimed, most of these players, they know that the longer they spend on this game, that's just time that they're not holding a trophy at the end of this day. So John Rolf drawing his opening hand, quite a few lands in there.
Yeah, that is a lot of lands, no removal, but he is on a mold of 6. So I think you just kind of have to keep and hope for the best here. You have that turn 1 Bomat Courier on the play, and hopefully John can either find some removal spells to get potential blockers out of the way to continue to attack with that Bomat Courier, or you just find some action. He really needs to find a 2-drop here.
If he can, though, then...
Oh, okay. That is totally fine.
Another copy of Bomat Courier. May as well hit that red zone.
So,
is there a Magma Spray here? No, it turns out Christian Hauck just playing the game. No reason not to at least put that thought in John's head. Plenty for them to think about already, of course.
And you got to keep him honest. And yeah, Christian Hauck also plays exactly 1 copy of Magma Spray, but you got to keep him honest.
There's a couple of players in this top 8 who've got cheeky one-offs in their deck that, especially once we hit these elimination stages, that's got to get in your opponent's head.
Well, absolutely, and I think there really is a lot of value in playing like unique one-ofs that aren't part of the kind of the stock meta game. I think Piotr Glogowski was playing 1 copy of Blossoming Defense, for example, and he was talking about how that just got a ton of players because that is a card nobody plays in their teamer decks.
Yeah, and the moments that you cast it tend to be the moments that you just win the game. You blow out, stop their removal, keep your best creature. 2 more damage, just get them every time. And Lightning Strike, the pickup there for John Rolf, meaning that he's getting to carry on attacking here quite nicely, dealing with the first 7th the Conduit. Another one coming down for Christian Hauck here.
John Rolf drew a second Bomat Courier for his first draw step, and then drew Lightning Strike to get that Servant of the Conduit out of the way. Wow!
Now,
and then now he drew an Earthshaker Kenra.
And here's the thing, Hauck we were talking about how John Rolf has been drew a hand with a lot of lands. Hauck's in the exact same boat. The difference is that he's not had these early threats going on in quite the same way, and John Rolf has been able to deal with those early threats very effectively.
Jeez.
Earthshaker Kenra, these attacks just keep on coming from John Rolf. This is what he wanted to achieve on these games on the play.
He can now... There are now 4 cards underneath that first Bomad Courier.
Yeah, if he doesn't like any additional cards that he has in hand, it's very reasonable to just consider switching them up for something different. Yeah.
Oh, wow. And Christian Hauck's hand is 4 lands and a Long Tusk Cub.
Now, is Hauck going to be able to maintain that stoic face? He certainly doesn't look as worried as he perhaps would be expected to in this situation.
Yeah, well, he does. So he does have a Long Tusk Cub with some energy, which does do a pretty good job of blocking all the creatures that are currently on the board. He does have that 4 energy. So he just has to kind of hope that John does have that. And he drew another land.
Oh, this is a rough old draw here for the member of Phoenix 404. Team of German players who came along expecting a lot of Teamer energy. Christian Hauck, a player very, very adept at the Teamer energy mirror, and that certainly served him well over the course of this tournament. But right now, his draw's really not working out as well as he might have hoped against Ramanat Red.
Yeah, he's got plenty of mana, so, and the Teamer energy deck does have a lot of top-end cards it can draw. But John does get to cash that Bomad Courier in for 5 cards next turn.
And we are at that point where cashing in kind of makes sense. I think the only card that you could draw that might change that opinion is if you happen to find Hazaret. And if that happens, then you're happy anyway.
Yeah, oh man, I was going to draw so many cards, but I guess I'll play this Hazaret, fine. No, that's not how that Bomad Courier works. So unlucky, I drew a spell.
Picks up an Abrade here, I believe.
Interesting. Wow, and that Abrade does actually put a twist on things here, because now he can actually attack with the Earthshaker Kenra, and Christian Hauck might choose to block with the Long Tusk Cub, and if he does, Christian Hauck will then likely use 2 energy to pump the Long Tusk Cub into a 3/3. In response, John Rolf can use that Abrade to get that Long Tusk Cub off the board.
Looks like there are different plans, though, for John Rolf here. Instead, aiming at the Servant of the Conduit. Little does he know that Christian Hauck, the one thing that he's not worried about is mana right now.
Yeah. Well, Christian Hauck also just has 4 lands in play, but it looks like John Rolf maybe playing around cards like Harness Lightning, for example. I think now he's okay attacking with both of the Bomad Couriers if he's willing to throw the card in hand away, because one of them is going to have 5 cards and the other is going to have 4, I believe. So I think he's going to be happy either way. So many cards.
4 cards underneath? Yep.
It's like 4 cards. Damn.
we all won 4 cards. And
Who doesn't like
John's
drawing
probably
4
gonna
cards?
get 5.
Let's be real here. Oh, but John gets to draw 5 cards.
Oh, Rapture. Has to throw away a Raptor for it, but you know what? I'll make that trade.
Yeah, but now there's a chance of more Hazarets, more burn spells, just more everything.
Yeah.
And Christian with absolutely no resources left here.
And we talked in the last game about how the red deck wants to kind of get through 10, 12, maybe even a little more of the easy damage, if you will, before the game gets a little bit locked up. In this case, John Rolf has got the first 10 damage through very easily indeed. He's been able to draw additional cards. Even if it works out that Christian Hauck draws great spells for the rest of the game, it's feasible to think that John Rolf might be able to send appropriate burn to the dome between the likes of Sunscorched Desert, Ramanat Ruins, and a small amount of burn spells.
Yeah, and John is in an absolutely commanding position here. I think I saw Lightning Strike in hand. So, yeah, he's got a Lightning Strike in hand. He played that Sunscorched Desert, and he's got a Ramunap Ruins in play. He doesn't even need to attack with creatures anymore to win this game.
Yeah, Teamer Energy, not known for its life gain, and that being the case.
I see there's an Appetite. Maybe he appetites the Bomad Courier, and John Rolf forgets to activate. That's
when we're starting looking for those lines, you know that the Teamer Energy deck's in a little bit of a trouble.
Your Sky Sovereign, gain some life. Okay.
Well, Virtuosa makes artifacts.
Yeah, one of the key cards to the matchup, but too little, too late here.
Yeah, and John Rolf, even with a Lightning Strike in hand, often you'll see the play of Lightning Strike on a Whirler Virtuoso with its trigger to make energy on the stack so that you can minimize the amount of Thopters that it can produce. But right now, John Rolf is on a different plan, and that plan involves just straightforwardly going for the life total of his opponent.
Oh yeah, we are now on that burn plan here. Definitely.
And actually, I don't know if John Rolf minds too much if his Earthshaker Kenra goes to the graveyard here, because he's at 5 mana right now. Once he gets up to 6, he can be looking at eternalizing that, and at that point it becomes a very potent attacker that can't be blocked by anything that Christian Hauck has going on.
Definitely. Yeah, and so John Rolf does have the option to use a Lightning Strike on the Long Tusk Cub and eat up all of Christian Hauck's energy, but at this point, Christian Hauck's at 9 life. You got a Lightning Strike in hand with the Ramunap Ruins. You could choose to use that. Oh, he didn't cast a Lightning Strike. Interesting. See, normally when I see, I see. So the reason why I think John decided not to go for the Lightning Strike there is he valued, like, that would tap him out. And then, so then if Christian Hauck had a removal spell as the last card in hand, he could use it on the Bomat Courier and John Rolf wouldn't be able to draw a card. But given the way the game's kind of played out, Christian Hauck pretty clearly drew that Whirler Virtuoso for his turn, so it's very unlikely that he has a removal spell for that Bomat Courier. But still playing it as conservatively as you can because you're so far ahead here.
Rampaging Ferocidon, this is likely to prompt some action from Christian Hauck's side of things. He really can't afford to be losing life for creatures coming into play by making Thopters later, so action kind of forced on him if he wants to spend some of that energy to make Thopters, and that of course means that that Long Tusk Cub not getting any bigger.
Yeah, I would think at least one Thopter is going to be made here.
Thinking, says Christian
We're
Hauck.
both thinking, Christian. I'm also not sure, so. Just do the opposite of what I'm thinking, and you'll probably be fine.
Hauck here, keen to at least sell the story to John Rolf that he's got lots of action in hand. We know that there's plenty of land there, but not a huge amount else. And Bomat Courier comes in here. Still more characters, cards rather, under the little letter bug.
Okay, so I imagine Lightning Strike, putting Christian down to 5, and then sacrifice the Bomat Courier and try to draw some more burn spells.
So 5.
Yeah, this has been an effective couple of letterbugs. When we consider the fact that John on a mull to 6 in this game, and with a hand that looked comparatively unexciting to kick things off, it has been all action on the Metagame Guru's Moon side of the table here.
I mean, if I'm going to mulligan to 6 and then draw 10 cards, I'll take it.
Yeah.
You know, that's an unmulligan X10.
Meanwhile, Christian Hauck on 5 life. Let me count the ways that I'm dead here. There's a Ramunap Ruins and 2 Sunscorched Deserts in play. So he can't afford to be just resting on his heels here. Has to be getting something going just simply because he knows that just based on what's on the battlefield, he will lose this game.
Yeah.
The question is whether or not with all those cards John Rolf has drawn, is it actually going to be even a little quicker than that?
The thing, Christian needs to get that Ferocidon off the board too, because if he wants to add more pressure to the board, but it's just... Yeah, John found a shock. There's a Ramunap Ruins, and there's some Hazrets. So if Christian goes down to 4 life, that'll be it. If Christian plays a creature, John Rolf does have the shock with the Ramunap Ruins for the final 4 points of damage. And I don't think Christian has enough of a clock here to end the game in 2 turns.
And this is one of those spots where Rampaging Ferocidon is just super duper powerful, because once John Rolf gets Christian Hauck's life total low enough, essentially he's saying, you can never play another creature while this is on the battlefield.
Right. John has a couple of options here. He can choose to play a Hazret here. He can still play Shock. He can play Hazret and actually the Bomat Courier and choose to attack with all 3 creatures. Christian Hauck can choose to make a Thopter, but he will lose 1 life because a Rampaging Ferocidon is on the battlefield. Then the Rampaging Ferocidon does have Menace, meaning that that does need to get double blocked. And then the Hazret also needs to be blocked, so the Bomat Courier would actually be able to get in for a point of damage here.
I think that he's going to struggle to attack with Hazret this turn because he's always going to have another Hazret and a Rampaging Ferocidon in hand. That said, he can...
I just assume you can always attack.
Well, that's the sort of thing that can sometimes lose you Pro Tours.
Turns out there are maybe slight drawbacks to Hazret.
Survey says.
It's just so late in the game. John Rolf has like 7 lands in play. Of course Hazret can attack.
Unfortunately,
forgot
we
he
keep
drew
forgetting
10
he's
cards.
drawn 10 extra cards this game.
10 cards!
John, at this point, you've got to make a play.
So the judge is just encouraging John Rolf to make a play here. While we're not on a clock here, we still like to make sure that things are moving along for you guys. So Karizev, the first play from John Rolf here. Loses a life. Now Karizev, interaction with Rampaging Frostodon, not the most exciting from the red side of things, but you know what? More creatures on the battlefield certainly doesn't hurt John Rolf. He's conveniently left up 5 mana, which means that he is going to be able to activate Ramunap Ruins at some point.
Yeah, he does have the mana to go Ramunap Ruins, end of turn, get Christian down to 3, Ramunap Ruins again, and then Shock. It's really unlikely that Christian Hauck boarded in counter magic for this matchup.
The Desperation Rogue Refiner, simply to draw a card here, does cost him a life in order to do it.
Yeah, and that's going to be it here.
Attacks.
Ooh, looks like the trigger may have been missed on the Rampaging Frostodon there.
Yeah, so Rampaging Frost on trigger was missed, but still will not matter as long as John Rolf remembers to use his Ramunap Ruins at the end of turn.
What a luxury for the red deck to be able to just... You can have that point in life.
Sometimes every point doesn't matter. And John's just like, I don't know what you could have here. You somehow double Long Tusk Cub's power. I'm just chump blocking because I got this game in the bag. 2 damage to the face, sacrifice on Scorched Desert, shock Ramunap Ruins, and that will be the game. Shock.
Shows the shock.
Christian's like, you got to do it. You got to do it. Show me. All right, it's on the board.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay, fine, you got it. And John Rolf picking up the second win. If we were in a regular regulation match, this would all be over right now, and John Rolf would be feeling pretty good about himself, heading across to his next round, high-fiving his buddies and explaining to them how he got the win, in spite of a mull to 6 in his game 3. But these guys, it's best of 5. Someone's going to have to, well, if it's John, he's going to have to win 1 more game. If it's Christian, well, he's got 2 on the bounce he wants to get going. But we are going to get a chance to see sideboarded games here now between Pascal Maynard and Piotr Glogowski. Going to be interesting to see whether or not Glogowski's feeling that after sideboarding things get better for him is going to be good enough, because right now the 22-year-old from Poland is 2 games down, and that means he needs to win all 3 of these post-sideboarded games if he's going to take this match.
Yeah, and generally for matchups like this, I do kind of, I think for game 1, you do generally favor the linear deck against kind of these mid-range strategies. But then after sideboard, I think the matchup swings in the other direction because you have access to a lot of answers to kind of what the other deck's trying to do. You know, Piotr has access to cards like Deathgorge Scavenger. He's got negates, very important to counter those refurbishes, and he's got River's Rebuke. I really want to see this card being cast at some point in this tournament.
I do like the Long Tusk Cub on turn 2, though, because in addition to stopping what Pascal has going on, Piotr Glogowski does have to actually get damage through. And early doors, we know that Pascal Maynard is not big on blocking with this deck. He's much more content to try and get things going in terms of his big combo finish. Strategic planning there, the play from Maynard, trying to get things going. This, an interesting one, originally a Portal 3 Kingdoms card. Look at the top 3 cards in the library, put 1 in your hand, the rest in the graveyard. Every element of this card just seems tailor-made for a Godfarer's Gift deck.
Yeah, it's absolutely perfect. It just helps you find whatever piece you're missing and dumps the rest of the cards in your graveyard. So you find a bunch of great creatures. That's just more food for the Godfarer's Gift.
And we do see our first sideboard card as one of the cards going to the graveyard for Pascal Maynard, because that is a copy of Hostile Desert, the land that can sometimes turn itself into a creature and do a bit of attacking. Meanwhile, all the actual attacking much more likely to be happening from Piotr's side of things.
Wow, this is a lot of damage. So this is 3, and then more energy. So this is a clock, and Pascal doesn't have as explosive of a start as he did in the first game. There is no Minister of Inquiries on turn 1. Does he have a way to put Godfarer's Gift in his graveyard this turn?
I mean, it looks like there's an Ibnu Rivulet in hand as one of his lands here. But yeah, it's really interesting that on the face of things, Minister of Inquiries does not look anything special. However, in practice for this deck, the games where there's a turn 1 Minister are so much more potent than the ones without. Charter Course here being used by Pascal Maynard as another way of drawing cards and discarding. Very little attacking going on from Pascal Maynard right now, and actually he's much happier being able to stick that copy of Godfarer's Gift into the graveyard there, thanks to Charter Course. Right now, though, not exactly a graveyard replete with creatures. Sacred Cat coming down as a very convenient double blocker. Blocks for 1 turn, gets embalmed, blocks for another turn, buying a huge amount of time for Pascal.
Yeah, so Pascal I think was considering cycling Cast Out to maybe find a Refurbish because he doesn't have one in hand. But I like playing the Sacred Cat because now this gives you the highest upside play of finding a Refurbish. And if you find a Refurbish, you now have a creature in the graveyard because you would have blocked with that Sacred Cat that you played that turn. But Piotr now just has a good clock. He doesn't even need to play anything else for the rest of the game. He's got that Long Tusk Cub. He's got that Rogue Refiner. So now if he has Counter Magic or a Braid, stuff like that, he can just keep mana up and you know, basically deal with that potential Godfarer's Gift.
Does Appetite for the Unnatural count in the stuff like that category?
It does count for stuff like that, yes. See, because Piotr did have that Forest in hand, he could have just played a Bristling Hydra this turn if he wanted to, but he is very concerned about that Godfarer's Gift in the graveyard, and he's got that, that clock.
Now, if you're Pascal Maynard playing with this deck, what proportion of games are you winning where you don't get to keep a Godfarer's Gift in play for at least a turn or two?
I think it really just depends on how much pressure Piotr Glogowski has. Long Tusk Cub is just one of the best creatures in the it's probably the best creature in the deck because it comes down early and it can just take over the game completely by itself. And you know, if Piotr does have a Long Tusk Cub turn 2 on the play, then it is really rough. But if he doesn't, then Pascal does have a good amount of time. Even if Piotr does have the answer for that Godfarer's Gift the first time around, Pascal's deck does have a lot of ways to kind of filter through his deck. And, you know, ultimately, he will very likely be able to stick one of those, you know, if he has some counter magic to maybe fight through some of the cards Piotr Glogowski has access to.
Glogowski quite animated when he's playing a lot of the time. I got to see him sort of putting his fingers to his temples, trying to do the mind read on opponents yesterday. He was trying to figure out what cards in hand. But right now, he doesn't even need to worry about getting in a cat fight like last turn because Sky Sovereign coming down and meaning that he's able to kill off the 1/1 zombie cat token. This does mean that the shields are down at least for a turn if Godfarer's Gift comes into play.
Wow.
But maybe he had the read that, well, if it didn't come into play last turn when you had 4 mana, maybe it's not going to come into play this turn either.
So if you notice, this turn, Piotr Glogowski opted to play Sky Sovereign, but did not attack with that Long Tusk Cub. It could have attacked through that the Champion of Wits, but he is very, very concerned about a potential refurbish this turn, and currently there are zero creature cards in Pascal's graveyard. So if Pascal chooses to cast refurbish this turn, there are going to be no targets, and if he does that, Piotr does have the answer next turn because he can untap and play the Appetite of the Unnatural for the Godfarer's Gift. So pretty heads-up play by Piotr. I mean, Pascal doesn't have the refurbish, but that doesn't mean that this was, you know, the incorrect play.
Well, here we see another sideboard card coming from Pascal Maynard. Angel of Sanctions. We've got one that we want to read here. A 3/4 flyer that when it enters the battlefield, you can exile target non-land permanent until the Angel of Sanctions leaves the battlefield. Does have Embalm as well. We won't worry about that just yet. Taking away Sky Sovereign. Now, a really interesting fight going on between Sky Sovereign and various of the creatures in Pascal's deck.
Was a good draw.
Off we got.
This was a decent draw, I'm just going to say. Harness Lightning off the top for Angel of Sanctions, getting back that Sky Sovereign, and now Piotr gets an attack here for 6 damage, 2 more energy, and that's a ton of pressure. But remember, Angel of Sanctions does have Eternalize.
And the interesting thing here is, of course, that with that Harness Lightning, not only was it a good draw for what it did to the board, he also gets to keep 3 lands untapped so that he does have Appetite for the Unnatural still up. 9 life left for Pascal Maynard, and by my count, we have more than 9 damage on the battlefield for Piotr Glogowski here.
Yeah. Well, you know, Piotr did like his matchup a little more after sideboard, and he does have a sideboard card in hand, and he had a great start, and Pascal didn't have that incredibly explosive start that he had in games 1 and 2.
It looks like the likelihood of this ending up being a sweep going down just a touch here. 6 mana.
Angel time. Sky Sovereign time. But
Sovereign time?
Sovereign time. But that Longtusk Cub is just bigger than anything on the board. Piotr can still attack as he does have that 3 energy.
Yeah, and Angel of Sanctions really not looking to get in a trade here, because a trade basically gives Piotr Sky Sovereign back once again.
Yeah, Longtusk Cub is just
So you take 3.
continuing to impress me. Oh, and he decides
Energy.
not to pump up the Longtusk Cub there. He wants that energy available for something else. Let's take a look. What is Piotr working with here?
Well, casting another Cub means he still gets to keep that appetite for the unnatural up. Being able to make sure that you can deal with a Godfarer's Gift before the combat step starts, such that there's not even going to be a single turn.
Wow!
What have we got? What have we
Pascal
seen?
Maynard, I think he's got 1 Fumigate in his sideboard. And do you know why you play 1? Because you draw it when you need it.
There we have it. 4th from the bottom. Oh, 4th from the top.
Oh, this is going to be great. Pascal's going to go attack you for 3.
I mean, it's a little unfortunate that a Fumigate is going to mean that we're going to
The Sky
see...
Sovereign does come back. The Sky Sovereign does come back. But Pascal will gain 4 life. So it will not be lethal. And he doesn't really have a great play here, I guess. I mean, he could just play an Angel of Invention and just go for some chump blocks. But it seems like he does need to answer these Longtusk Cubs that are on the board. And Piotr has been keeping up mana like the entire game. So Pascal has to put him on either a Braid or Appetite for the Unnatural. Okay, so it looks like he's going to try to buy a little bit of time here by playing the Angel of Invention first, and then maybe, choose for a later time to actually cast that Fumigate.
And this way, he's got a few more options potentially with those extra draw steps. He's got mana up so that he can cycle a cast out if he so chooses. But Glogowski here in the luxurious position of only needing to deal 6 more points of damage here. These are the interesting games for me with the Godfarer's Gift deck. They're not the ones where you just go off on turn 4, get the Godfarer's Gift down and just simply win the game. The ones where you need to maneuver a little bit to get there. And certainly Piotr Glogowski's done a great job of putting Pascal Maynard on the back foot in this post-sideboarded game.
Yeah, but actually this Angel of Invention is making these attacks with the Longtusk Cub pretty difficult. Oh, but there's a Rogue Refiner.
So much energy all of a sudden.
So that's a potential 6/6 Longtusk Cub and a 5/5 Longtusk Cub on the board.
And Glogowski, he said when he was thinking about sideboarding for this matchup, there's a few different ways that it could go. I'm not quite sure which options Pascal Maynard's going to take, and as such, he said that this game 3 was very, very important to him in the texture of this match, so that he could get a feel for whether or not he was going to have to pivot shift after he'd figured out how the sideboarding was going on the other side of things.
Yeah, I just want to see a Rivers Rebuke. Rivers Rebuke would be pretty good on this board. Pretty good.
Yeah, I would say so.
You're just lining up blocks here. This Longtusk Cub might not actually have great attack. Well, if he makes an attack where, like for example, I don't think the Angel of Sanctions is likely to block because he gets his Sky Sovereign back.
Pascal Maynard stemming the bleeding here, and if he casts a Fumigate now, he's of course gaining that much more life.
Right. But maybe maybe his plan is to just cast a bunch of Angels and win that way, because currently, Pascal's creatures that he's... Oh!
Refurbish off the top there.
Oh, that is a refurbish, but no creatures in the graveyard currently. Oh, no, was that a champion? That might have been a champion.
There is a Champion of Wits
There
in
is
the
a Champion
graveyard,
of Wits.
yes.
Okay, so this was huge. And Piotr has 2 mana up, so Pascal does have to respect the fact that Piotr's been keeping up mana. He could have an Abrade here.
Or a Negate.
Or a Negate, right.
So many options suggested by those 3 colors of mana on those 2 lands. Just a dinky little attack from Angel of Invention. It does have Vigilance. It's got lifelink.
So the attack means Pascal is putting Piotr on a Braid or Negate here, because the Godfarer's Gift only triggers at the beginning of your combat step. So he's very unlikely to go for the Refurbish here, and I think he's probably just going to look to add to his board. Or cast that Fumigate.
I mean, Champion of Wits he has going on. If he wants to, he can draw a few additional cards with Charter Course. He's got a lot of cards in hand here.
He's got a lot of options. He's just trying to hang on here and just survive because I think he's definitely favored here in the late game.
This has been such an interesting game.
Yeah.
Is it going to be that Pascal Maynard is essentially winning with Angel beatdown?
So one interesting thing I want to actually point out in this game is, so Piotr felt like he was pretty safe here to just keep up appetite for the Unnatural the entire game. But by doing so, he missed a turn of playing Bristling Hydra, which could have ended the game much sooner. But that would have given Pascal a one-turn window to actually play Refurbish on that God Pharaoh's Gift. And that might actually end up costing him. It reminds me of, you know, just how players play against combo decks in general, because you're so afraid of the combo, you just don't even play your spells. And oftentimes, that strategy can end up costing you more games than actually help.
Well, Champion of Wits with Angel of Invention in play gets to draw you 3 cards on the first cast when you then have to discard 2. So a little bit of a bonus there. And now Pascal, he has to decide whether or not he wants to put the Angel in the graveyard or keep it in hand, because he can be casting it. Puts a few creatures in the graveyard.
We just call that good deck building.
And search for Azcanta as well. That one is going to be transforming very shortly.
Yeah, and Piotr is in a rough spot here. He's got all those Bristling Hydras, but he's been trying to keep up appetite for the Unnatural the whole game. Like, he needs to add to the board here because Pascal just keeps casting spells that's not God Pharaoh's Gift. And so will he play this Bristling Hydra? And if he does, he's going to be incredibly behind.
An extra land, kind of helpful here, because it means that...
There it is! River's Rebuke!
Oof.
River's Rebuke for the win!
Turns out you do not just pick up your non-land permanents. When you're at 8 life and your opponent's got a whole bunch of creatures, you just pick up everything and say, all right, fine, it's on to the next game.
That was insane! We did it!
Achievement unlocked. We got our River's Rebuke in the feature match area. Very happy to get a chance to see that one. And of course, that means that we're going to get to see more magic from those guys soon enough, because it was not the 3-0 sweep. We've got the first win on the board for Piotr Glogowski. We are going to best of 5, and because it's best of 5, that means we've got more magic on the other table as well, Paul Cheon. We're going to get a chance to see a little bit more of Christian Hauck against John Rolf. Currently, John Rolf leading 2-1 against the Teamer Energy deck of Christian Hauck.
I was wondering why he was so excited for that 6th land. I'm like, 6th land? I mean, you can play Bristling Hydra, but you still can't keep up appetite. Why would you be so... Oh.
Yeah, turns out all the pieces of the puzzle working. And Christian Hauck, he's piecing together his mana base in these early turns of the game. Gets to cast his Attune with Ether, finding a land. That obviously kind of what you want to be doing on the first turn a lot of the time with these Teamer decks. Basically just greasing the wheels of everything you've got going on, getting that energy, getting your mana base sorted, making everything that much easier.
Yeah, and Christian does have kind of that ideal start where you go turn 1 on Attune with Ether into turn 2 Longtusk Cub, meaning that Longtusk Cub gets to dodge shock, and he drew Whirler Virtuoso. So this is looking really, really good for Christian Hauck.
Let's see what John Rolf has to say about this. He's having a little think. Did not have a 1-drop. Just looks on as Longtusk Cub comes along.
So I actually like that. Christian Hauck was actually thinking, so you saw that pause there. He was actually debating whether or not he wanted to play Servant of the Conduit or Longtusk Cub, because if John Rolf had a card like Abrade or Lightning Strike, he would have been able to deal with the Longtusk Cub on turn 2. But if John Rolf does that, that means he hasn't played a threat on turn 2. And I think Christian Hauck is okay with losing his Longtusk Cub to a Lightning Strike on turn 2 if John isn't adding to the board.
So Harsh Mentor coming down on turn 2 for John Rolf, and that kind of an interesting one in this matchup because there are so many different activated abilities using energy in Christian Hauck's deck. You saw there Christian Hauck responding to the Harsh Mentor by putting a +1/+1 counter on Longtusk Cub.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
I'll take it.
John Rolf says he'll take it. I'm pretty sure Christian Hauck will take this draw as well. A very happy place to start off with, attacking in for 3 there with that Longtusk Cub, generating some energy. Yes, it's going to end up that Hauck might take a little bit of damage if he chooses to use that energy while Harsh Mentor's on the board, but at some point John Rolf may simply have to throw that Harsh Mentor under the bus.
Yeah, so
Longtusk Cub.
Christian paused there. He's like, do I want to pay, spend two life to actually get in for an additional point of damage? And I think you do, because ultimately you do want that Longtusk Cub to be a 4/4. Yeah. Christian still has the energy left over to make a Thopter here to block if you wanted to. But this Longtusk Cub, the mono red deck really just doesn't have a lot of good answers once this Cub gets to 5-5. You have Chandra Glorybringer if it's a 4-4, but there is no card in that deck that actually can just deal with a gigantic Long Tusk Cub.
Well, if you're looking for different ways that you can discourage Whirler Virtuoso from being good, combining up Rampaging Ferocidon and Harsh Mentor means that now if Hauck chooses to spend 3 energy to make a Thopter, he's taking 3 points of damage.
Right, but Hauck here is just going to continue to play just larger creatures. He's got a Bristling Hydra here, which is going to put him up to 6 energy. So that Long Tusk Cub is potentially... Yeah, Harsh Mentor does not trigger off of ETBs, enter the battlefield effects, only activated abilities.
He has not. The trigger's fine.
Oh, and then, of course, the Rampaging Ferocidon effect.
Can I attack?
So Hauck very keen to get into the red zone here.
So that's a potential 7/7 Long Tusk Cub. And I think Christian is probably going to at least pump one more time here, because that will still give him access to 6 energy, which means he still has 2 Bristling Hydra activations available.
Now the question for John Rolf here is, how much does he want to let through? Because at some point he's just going to be overwhelmed here.
Yeah, it's just really hard for him to block here. I think John Rolf's just thinking, okay, it's okay. I'm going to be on the play next game. It's all good. I'm going to be on the play. I'm going to draw 10 cards again, and things are going to be great.
11. Go.
15 to 11 the life total now. All the damage that has been dealt thus far this game has been at Christian Hauck's behest. On both sides of things, the damage that he's taken has largely been through playing into the various punishing cards of John Rolf. Meanwhile, look at the amount of damage that he's been able to deal in these early turns. It should be the red deck that's getting the damage through in the early turns,
but
surely.
But John actually just, did not have a 1-drop, and Christian's creatures are just currently outclassing his. And John's hope to win here is if somehow Christian just decides to make 4 Thopter tokens.
You know what? Without the Attune with Ether on turn 1, how different would this game have been?
It would largely depends on whether or not John Rolf had the shock to start the game.
I believe that he's had it in hand for the entire game.
Yeah,
He's
so
just never been able to deploy it.
Attune was just huge. The thing is, Christian Hauck still had a very good draw. He did have the Whirler Virtuoso, but yes, a turn one shock to answer that turn to Long Tusk Cub on the draw would have been just win or loss here. I mean, John Rolf had a pretty good hand here. He had Harsh Mentor, Rampaging Ferocidon, Shock, Hazret, and Lightning Strike. He had a good hand, but Christian's curve was just much stronger this game.
So the German from Team Phoenix 404 looking to push for a deciding game 5 and in pretty solid spot to do so. Another Whirler Virtuoso. Yes, there's going to be some damage from that Rampaging Ferocidon. Christian Hauck 14, John Rolf 10. So far, 16 damage dealt based entirely on the decisions of Christian Hauck in this game.
That Harsh Mentor has been pretty punishing.
And Long Tusk Cub now a 5/5 with potential to grow so much larger.
It's got potential to deal 10, right? He's got 10 energy, so he can pump it up 5 times. But he does have to be mindful. If he pumps it up 5 times, if it goes unblocked, John Rolf could have exactly double shock to get Christian Hauck.
What a strange game this has been. So many mind games. The good news for Christian Hauck is that it seems very likely that John Rolf is going to have to put some amount of creatures in the way of some of the creatures on the other side of things here. And once a few creatures go away for John Rolf, firstly, Christian may just not have to pump very much. And secondly, it means that his attacks in future turns, maybe those Whirler Virtuosos can get stuck in, will be even better.
Yeah.
How many cards? 2?
2 cards.
So, yeah, I like putting the Earthshaker Kenra in front of the Long Tusk Cub, and I think, yeah, he's probably just going to take the 4 damage here from the Bristling Hydra, as they are doing a pretty good job of keeping those Whirler Virtuoso tokens at bay.
Take 4. Go to 6.
And at some point, it may be that John Rolf is the one caught in the Rampaging Ferocidon trap here. Just unable to play creatures because he's on such a low life total and facing so many threats on the other side of things.
So Christian Hauck is on 13. John Rolf's going to probably fire off one of his burn spells here. Question is, where does he want to target it? Is it just going to go to one of the creatures, or he's going to put Christian down to 10? I don't think he's got enough burn spells in hand to finish the game, so he might actually just have to target one of these burn spells at Christian's creatures. Empty out his hand, play a Hazoret, and then block. Hazoret can block that Longtusk Cub indefinitely.
It's going to cost him a point of life just to cast that Hazoret.
Oh, it sure will. For example, he could just choose to Lightning Strike a Whirler Virtuoso this turn. Christian Hauck has access to plenty of mana.
I mean, what happens if Christian Hauck just decides that he is going to go in on some Thopters here?
It's a lot of damage. Every time he makes a Thopter, Rampaging Ferocidon will trigger, dealing 1 damage. Then he will also take 2 damage from Harsh Mentor for the activated ability.
It's a funny old game that we got going on here where, like, the life total, even for Christian Hauck, which appears comparatively high, can get punished pretty hard by what's going on in this game. Ethersphere Harvester, interesting, but for the fact that Rampaging Ferocidon's in play, that means that life gain is not happening. I mean, as a body on the board, it's a pretty good one because it doesn't even trigger the Rampaging Ferocidon when it comes into play because it's not a creature yet.
Oh, so Ethersphere Harvester for defensive purposes. Did he get the energy? Did he miss the energy trigger, or are they just looking for a counter?
2 cards?
Yep.
Oh, he missed the energy trigger.
Ooh.
Ooh, that is... I guess, I mean, there is a Rampaging Ferocidon on the board, so players can't gain life, but... Still important to get the energy where you can. I think John might have been a little bit rattled there. He did just receive a slow play warning, as he's, you know, even in the previous matches, a little more methodical, thinking out all the plays. We're playing at the Pro Tour.
And I think one of the biggest fallacies that I hear from a lot of players is that the red decks are the ones that are easy to play because they're just trying to attack people and go to the head, attack, attack, attack. It's like, in my experience, quite the reverse.
Yeah, that one game where you just lose because you missed a single point of damage will haunt you for the rest of your life. So you just need to make sure you played everything just to get, you know, the full 20 in to win games. All right, is it time?
Oh, I think so.
It's time.
Welcome to the red zone. Whirler Virtuoso getting stuck in alongside
Kind of
Seven the
looks like
Conduit.
a light beige zone to me, or like grayish, something like that. You know?
You might be onto something here. I'm colorblind. I've got no idea.
Oh, that was okay. Now I feel bad. So if he crews, does he take 2 damage? He does, right? With the Harsh Mentor.
Yes, he does. Wow, he managed to form a perfect trap for himself with his various creatures. A bit of a rough one there for John Rolf. He had a bunch of good cards, but they just did not match up well to Christian Hauck's start there. We're going to get a chance to jump right on across and see more magic from Pascal, Maynard, and Piotr Glogowski. This has just been back and forth magic. I've been very happy to see that it's not been full-on sweeps. I think that all of these players, all of these decks definitely have proven their worth already in this top 8. And of course, 2 out of 4 of them will be advancing to the semifinals soon enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And for Pascal now that he's seen that River's Rebuke, I mean, I think he kind of expected it already, but I wouldn't be surprised if he has Negate and potentially even Jace's Defeat come out of the sideboard to deal with that card.
I mean, not too many targets with Jace's Defeat, but if one of them is the card that, when it gets cast, you basically lose the game, then yeah, I think it may well be worth it. We see it an Attune with Ether on turn 1 from Piotr Glogowski here. Whether or not it can end up being as good as the one that we saw just mere moments ago from Christian Hauck, hard to say, but you know what? Anytime you get to fix your mana is a pretty happy time.
Right. Where are the Minister of Inquiries? Maybe he sideboarded them out. They were so good in the first 2 games. But I think Pascal and his teammates likely did a ton of testing for this. Probably potentially identified it as one of the worst cards in the matchup, maybe.
Strategic planning here, sending a couple of cards to the bin, picking up just the one of them. Champion of Wits now, I believe, in the graveyard.
Yeah, I imagine the God Pharaoh's Gift deck definitely plays out a little bit slower. It's a little bit less linear. You got a little more reactive cards. You did see cards like the Angel of Sanctions and the Fumigate come out. Also, I imagine cards like Negate also being sideboarded in this matchup. So Piotr has access, gets a little more time here, a little more breathing room. to develop his board and not just fear. It's much less likely, rather, that Pascal just has the turn 4.
And in terms of mana woes that we saw for Piotr in one of the earlier games, turn 2, Servant of the Conduit definitely helps on that account.
The classic turn 1 and 2 and turn 2 Servant of the Conduit, never worry about mana for the rest of the game draw.
Has an Ether Hub in hand, so coloured mana very much sorted, and if he doesn't need to tap the Ether Hub for coloured mana, well, that means that essentially his energy largely in check. A Braid in hand alongside Bristling Hydra, that means that if the first Godfarrow's Gift comes down, there's a good chance that he's going to be able to deal with that before it deals too much damage.
Oh, wow, Pascal's hand is loaded.
Let's check that one out. So
Look at that. Oh, so he does have the Minish. Okay, I don't even know how they sideboarded. I just give up.
Godfarrow's Gift and Refurbish. Something's going to get to go to the graveyard here. Ministry of Inquiries is the choice. I guess that if you don't have it by now,
Oh, this is
maybe
nice.
don't need it.
So there's a Godfarrow's Gift. He's gonna discard it, and he does have the Refurbish. But I guess he doesn't have he has a creature engraver. He's got the Ministry. So now Piotr is in a rough spot, right? Because he needs to put pressure here so he can play a Bristling Hydra, right? And just hope that Pascal doesn't have the Refurbish this turn. And if he does do that, then Pascal does get to refurbish the Godfarrow's Gift and then eternalize the Champion of Wits and, yeah, get a lot of value. So even if Piotr uses that Abrade on the Godfarrow's Gift, Pascal's still going to have a 4/4 Champion of Wits on the battlefield while drawing 4 and discarding 2 cards.
Yeah, it's one of those weird situations where you maybe have enough value from your Godfarrow's Gift just from this first combat step that you don't actually have to worry too much about the others, because he's drawing so many cards here. He could just draw another Refurbish, and then even if there's an Abrade, just get back that Godfarrow's Gift again. It'll be in the graveyard, which is where you want it.
Yeah, absolutely. The Teamer deck doesn't really have a whole lot of card drawing in the deck. It's got a lot of value creatures. You know, you have cards like Whirler Virtuoso that makes you tokens. Rogue Finder draws you 1 card. But look at what Pascal's doing. Strategic planning, digging 3 cards, finding additional copies of Refurbish. Champion of Wits, digging you deeper. And then here, draw 4, discard 2. And his hand is Godfarrow's Gift and an Angel of Sanctions as well.
Everything coming up Maynard thus far. There is an Abrade in hand for Piotr Glogowski, so it's certainly by no means over here. But Champion of Wits, one of the most important cards for the Godfarrow's Gift deck. It successfully gets cards in your graveyard. It has useful abilities to draw you cards to get your combo going. It's also just, you know, a sizable body at a nice spot on the curve. Really one of the key cogs in the machine that's making this Godfarrow's Gift deck a force in Standard.
Definitely. The Champion of Wits and Angel of Invention just being the 2 most important creatures in the deck.
And fully 50% of the creatures in Pascal's main deck at least.
Right.
Now, if you're Piotr here, you have to fire off the Abrade, surely. You can't let that Godfarrow's Gift hang around for too much longer. Even if you know that there's the chance that it's just going to come back again, yeah. Like, it's just too powerful when it's on the battlefield to leave alone.
And you... I think you probably want to use it main phase. The reason being is Pascal could now have counter magic to protect the Godfarrow's Gift. If you let Pascal untap and then you try to Abrade the Godfarrow's Gift, what if Pascal negates you? Then the game is more or less over at that point.
I mean, worth noting here that even with Godfarrow's Gift in play, even having got that first creature in play, Pascal's still not in a position where he can reasonably attack.
Yeah.
This is not a combo deck that wins in one gigantic turn very often. It's more a matter of it does something so powerful that it then is able to snowball things relatively quickly.
Yeah. And once you've gotten so far ahead on cards, you can just start casting your Angels. You can start just hard casting your Godfarrow's Gift because you've drawn so many cards. You just have the 7 lands to just start hard casting all these cards. And if you saw, Piotr actually used the Abrade on Pascal's main phase, because of course the Godfarrow's Gift triggers at the beginning of combat.
Lovely plays there from Glogowski. Very technical-minded player, plays a lot of Lantern Control in Modern, and that's one of those decks that definitely puts you in a mindset of, I'm going to have a very crisp
So he hates fun,
play.
is what you're saying.
I mean, he hates other people having fun.
Fair enough.
So Glogowski using his Bristling Hydra relatively aggressively here in terms of energy, just to make sure that he can get rid of that Champion of Wits, which does get exiled because it had already been brought back with Godfarrow's Gift.
That is an interesting attack, because Piotr got to just kind of eat the Bristling Hydra for free here.
And I guess that maybe this is a concession to saying, I don't want you to have too much energy. Life gets difficult for me if you do. And combine that with this Angel of Sanctions here, meaning that he is actually putting a little bit of a hurting on the mana that Piotr Glogowski has going on. He now gets to turn into Angel Beatdown.
Yeah, Angel Beatdowns. And keep in mind, he, I believe, has a copy of God Pharaoh's Gift in hand. So, you know, in a couple turns, he can just start casting. Oh, he has 2 God Pharaoh's Gifts in hand.
Now, that's definitely more than you want. These are not legendary. You can end up with multiple in play at the same time, and those games get fairly silly quite quickly, it must be said. But it's a 7-mana artifact that 1 is plenty most of the time.
I think there's a decent chance here that the Champion Wits kind of gets in front of the Bristling Hydra. I think Pascal might also just be considering a double block here with the Angel of Sanctions, because currently the Bristling Hydra is a 6/5.
Now, of course, now that Champion of Wits is in the graveyard, sometimes you don't need a God Pharaoh's Gift to get it back as a 4/4.
Right.
The 6th land is in hand for Maynard here.
And Maynard, so that attack from the previous turn was Maynard just hoping that Piotr does not have another energy source in hand, because now he has a Fairgrounds Warden in hand, which he can use which he can use to get the Bristling Hydra off the board.
I'm trying to think how many times this tournament I've seen someone successfully able to target a Bristling Hydra and remove it. This might be the first.
Right.
17.
Pascal Maynard living his dream here in this second Pro Tour top 8, the member of Team Massdrop West.
Ooh, the rare post-combat chart, of course, maybe. Oftentimes with this deck, you want to chart a course to draw a card and put something in your graveyard, but okay, no, he's going to start out with the Fairgrounds Warden. Look at that. No energy.
You go to exile.
But you're the energy
You go
deck.
to exile. The 1/3 Dwarf Soldier says, Bristling Hydra, you're coming with me.
All right, and then probably a pass here. So a River's Rebuke, I guess, would be okay, but it wouldn't be nearly as devastating as it would have been in an earlier game.
Well, I mean, River's Rebuke in the last game set up a lethal attack immediately. This time around, it would mean that you get back both of your creatures, which is kind of nice.
So I just want to point out something, and you have to give Pascal credit for this. Pascal decided to play the Fairgrounds Warden first before casting the Charter Course. And oftentimes, you want to play the Charter Course first to get more information, then you play your Fairgrounds Warden. But he was mindful of the 1 copy of Supreme Will in Piotr's deck and played around it by playing that Fairgrounds Warden first and keeping up 3 mana.
And we, of course, saw the Supreme Will shortly thereafter, so immediately vindicated for that choice.
Definitely. You got to feel real smart when that happens.
Love it. 7th the Conduit coming down for Piotr Glogowski. Now he's got that 3 energy that he wished he had so much sooner. Opt, the original Invasion art being played by Pascal Maynard, to get a scry and then draw a card.
Yeah, and he's just so far ahead in cards now. At this point, Piotr has, what, like 2 cards in his hand? He can just start playing God Pharaoh's Gifts and try to get the answers out of hand. And even if he does, like, if let's say Piotr just has a counterspell here or whatever, he's still got that Angel putting on a lot of pressure. So I think there's a pretty good chance, especially because he has that backup God's Pharaoh Gift in hand, that he goes for it. Okay, no, he actually decides to wait and
14.
draw some cards.
I kind of like just embalming the Champion of Wits in the graveyard
there's
and
the
not
Champion
even
of Wits.
needing to
Right.
to cast the
Will he have to
God Pharaoh's
discard
Gift.
here? How many cards does he have in hand?
I mean, he's going to have to discard to the ability regardless. He's going to draw 4 and
Well,
discard
right.
2.
I mean, I meant after getting ahead 2 cards.
I mean, maybe. What a life, eh?
Yeah.
What a life, Pascal Maynard leaning here, drawing so many additional cards compared to his opponent. And this, I guess, the sort of secret extra win condition, it's not all about getting Angel of Invention in play early and just beating people up. Sometimes you just say, my deck that can beat down in the air also gets to draw 10 to 12 extra cards every game.
This deck has so many great mana sinks in the late game. You can just draw God Pharaoh's Gifts and cast them. You have your Angels, both Angels. You have the Embalm triggers. You have the Embalm effects on the Angel of Sanctions and the Eternalize on the Champion of Wits. There's just so much you can do in the late game, and Piotr just has such an anemic board right now.
There is a Hostile Desert in play. There are like options to do all sorts of things with Ipnu Rivulet if you want, which I believe is currently sat in Pascal Maynard's hand. He's got a deck that once it hits the mid and late game just does some bonkers stuff, and I'm very happy that we're getting a chance to see almost all of it.
Right. So many cards. I can't even read all of them.
Wow.
They're just squished so tightly in his hand.
Yeah, hopefully our spotters on the floor will be able to help out a little bit with that. We also have key graveyard cards.
Is
to
there
think
space
about.
on our graphic?
At some point, maybe not. Here is a negate from Piotr Glogowski here, but unfortunately, that on its own, not enough to stem the bleeding here because Pascal Maynard has hit the stage in the game where he's starting to attack. Piotr Glogowski's life total, he was on 14, he's now on 7. He's gonna be
Well,
facing
now it's
lethal
definitely
soon.
over. Kitty
Cat
cat
on board.
Kitty cat on the battlefield. That is it. That's the nail in the coffin.
Is pointing to midnight. It may be lights out for Piotr Glogowski here. Gaining a little bit of energy off that ether hub.
More energy and
Just the,
another go.
just the 2 cards in hand and womp womp.
More lands.
You can see Piotr Glogowski here reflecting on what's going on this board. This may be the end of this Pro Tour top 8 for him, but it's been some absolutely fantastic play that we've seen from him over the course of this weekend. Would not be at all surprised to see him sat in this feature match area. Plenty more in tournaments to come.
Yep.
Pascal Maynard here. He's on cleanup duty at this point, though.
Yeah, he can just play whatever he wants at this point. Even what he has on the board is likely good enough to win, but is he going for the main phase charter course? And is he going to play at that God Pharaoh's Gift here?
I mean, if you're looking to close the door on things, this is a reasonable way
I just want to see the cat attack, honestly. That would be good. Oh, yeah. Send a message with that cat. Oh, I thought he had nothing.
Ooh, interesting. There wasn't a braid somewhere lurking that we had presumably missed. Not to worry about that, but you know what? Even in spite of such plays, a tough old time here for Piotr Glogowski. He gets back a Bristling Hydra at instant speed for killing off that copy of Fairgrounds Warden.
So Hydra can go in front of the Eternalized Champion of Wits. He can turn that into a 6/5. He blocks the cat, and yeah, he'll go down to 1.
Nice line of play there for Glogowski.
Still needs to find an answer for that angel.
These angel beatdowns.
Yes. 21. 1. Yes.
And in a spot like this, River's Rebuke is still just not going to be close to enough.
Yeah, it buys a small amount of time, but it does not set up the kind of win that you're looking for.
Just in case he hasn't drawn enough cards.
Well, let's send a message. That message being zombie cat on board.
Well, I mean, Piotr is at 1, so might as well just play a ton of 1-powered.
Yeah, the secret special ability of Minister of Inquiries, attacking for 1.
No, because it's like God Pharaoh's Gift with a land open last turn, cast ops at the end of turn.
They're just confirming that there's been the right number of lands played and so on. So easy to get mixed up when you're drawing so many extra cards.
Right.
Lose
It's like,
track
did I
of
play a
exactly where
land?
things are at.
Did I play a land? Oh, okay.
Redraws.
He's like, look, I got nothing. Let's see what we can get here.
Is he going to flip it?
A
River's Rebuke would at least buy him a little time.
He needs to find an answer to that Angel of Sanctions. If he doesn't, the game is over.
There's the handshake. Pascal Maynard is our first semi-finalist here at Pro Tour Ixalan. It's 3-1 against Piotr Glogowski, seeing a great level of play, both in terms of the straightforward games that he was always going to win with just a very powerful draw, and then the slightly tougher ones. 3-1. We will see more of him soon enough, but there's more magic in this first set of quarterfinals. Let's head back and see how things work out now between Christian Hauck and John Rolf here at Pro Tour Ixalan.
So the 3 games where Pascal Maynard refurbished God Pharaoh's Gift on turn 4, he won. Makes sense. Story checks out.
Yeah, I can believe it.
Yeah.
Looks like Christian Hauck on a
Wow,
Malta
he's on
5 here.
5.
Facing a turn 1 Bomat Courier attacking in. This is not how he drew it up.
A turn 1 draw 5 spell is what we've seen. Okay.
Attune with Ether. Just trying to get things going here. These guys both very eager to get through this last game in a positive fashion and be able to get on to a semi-finals berth. John Rolf on the play. Having won the game one, just so important to him, means that he got the play in this deciding game, given that it's gone to a full 5.
Yes, very, very crucial. And Christian Hauck, you know, I mean, the Teamer Energy deck is very powerful. Cards like Rogue Refiner do get you out of these mulligan effects. And if you have a card like Whirler Virtuoso, that often acts as kind of 2 cards for the 2 cards against the Raminap red deck. But right out the gate here with a Bomat Courier and an Earthshaker Kenra, does he have a removal spell at least?
Does have an Abrade, a shuffle to the front of his hand. Might in fact have 2 copies of various removal spells to work with here. But he's going to be taking little points here and there, and those points add up relatively quickly. And if it works out on a multi-5, he's missing a land drop or 2, then he may never get to that mid-game, which is where the Teamer deck starts to pull ahead.
Right. I think Christian just kind of deciding where he wants to use his removal spell. Does he want to take less damage and get the Earthshaker Kenra off the board, or does he not want to get buried by the card advantage provided by the Bomat Courier?
I mean, at the moment, John Rolf's still with cards in hand, and by the looks
Still
of the
not
cards
sure.
that he's got
Okay.
going on, he might want to be at least working his way up to that Hazoret.
15.
So Christian choosing to preserve his life total here. Needs a good 3 here. No 3. So he's got a kind of an interesting turn here. He can play Servant of the Conduit because if he does, he can go land Glorybringer next turn. I don't know if he actually has the land.
You can go.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, he does not
with
have
these
the land.
mulligans, the lands are the tough bit.
Right. I think he's probably, yeah, he's just going to use the removal spell here, most likely on the Karizev. Yep. But this Bomat Courier now sitting on 4 cards.
Take 1.
This is Bomat Courier living its little
Oh,
post-bug
yeah, this
dream.
is just the absolute dream, definitely.
It's sad that the dream for a Bomat Courier is at some point it's going to sacrifice itself for the
For a
sake of all
good
its letters.
pause.
And now it's going to cost John Rolf 2 life, because that Harsh Mentor, he swings both ways.
Right. Christian Hauck did draw a Long Tusk Cub, which is pretty good at blocking both of the creatures on the battlefield, but it will be a bit painful for him to pump up the Long Tusk Cub, as there is that Harsh Mentor on the battlefield.
And right now, Rolf could easily be sat on some sort of spot removal. It's not going to take too much to deal with Long Tusk Cub with 4 energy knocking about if it's also got the intention of blocking.
Harsh Mentor, nice piece of tech to play in the 2-mana slot for the red decks, as it is very punishing against many of the things that the energy deck can do. It does make it painful to use activations from your Long Tusk Cub, also making Whirler Virtuoso tokens.
All right, Long Tusk Cub with 4 energy to work with.
Here we go. And John Rolf has a Shock here, and he's choosing to use it here because he has a Hazoret the Fervent in hand. And he can't afford to draw a spell here and not use the Shock, because then he wouldn't have been able to attack with the Hazoret. So Hazoret crashes onto the battlefield here, and it's going to be super difficult on the Mold of 5. No Whirler Virtuoso, and this Hazoret...
She brings her own advantage.
Oh my goodness, yes.
That's what she's holding there, in fact, in the other hand. It's just a big advantage bar, pointing straight towards herself.
Right.
Swinging in the red zone here.
She's pointing the wrong way. She needs to be pointing to the right.
Christian Hauck just has to take it, and this a rough old beat for him on 7 life. Hazoret does have an ability. There is a card in hand for John Rolf. This is a sticky wicket for Christian Hauck if he's going to try and find a way out of this one.
Yeah, Christian Hauck at this point, he's just basically just casting chump blockers. Rogue Refiner is okay. He's going to get some energy, draw a card, but he needs to find lands here to try to stabilize, but he doesn't have any answer for the Hazoret yet, and he doesn't have close to enough pressure to actually turn this game around.
Yeah, there's so many different avenues to victory here for John Rolf. A weird spot where he's going to pay 3 mana and discard a card to deal 2 damage to both of them, thanks to Harsh Mentor. But when the life totals are so heavily in Rolf's favor, I don't think that's going to be too much of a concern.
Yeah. Still on Christian here. Don't really think he's in a position here to attack.
Yeah, and basically he needs to achieve quite a lot in these turns. He needs to somehow weather the storm here, get to a point where he can
Something
cast these
else?
bigger spells.
Wow. In a braid onto the Rogue Refiner means that John Rolf is going to send with everything here.
Why not? Yeah, Hazaret can attack now. Just the one card in hand for John Rolf. 7 damage left to deal, and Hazaret is a must block. That means 3 damage coming through from the other 2 creatures on the face of things here.
And John Rolf just, you know, it's a pretty clear attack with everything, but he just wants to make sure. We're in the top 8 of the Pro Tour here. Game 5 to see who moves on to the semifinals.
Yeah, the Metagame Guru's Moon player does not want to have some small misstep ultimately cost him a place at this next round here at the Pro Tour, and potentially a Pro Tour trophy if things go well over the course of this Sunday.
Right. Christian Hauck has to block Hazaret the Fervent here. There is no real great block. If he blocks the Harsh Mentor, Christian Hauck's going to go down to 1 in the face of a Hazaret. What card can he possibly have? I mean, I don't think there's actually a card he can have that turns the game around, but...
I mean, even if he drew land into Confiscation Coup for Hazaret, Hazaret's tapped right now.
Right.
And here's Karizev, that a really problematic one to block. Also, Menace and producing an additional attacker. Servant at the Conduit. So much
like,
energy.
I'm going to have 11 energy before I go out. And this should be it. John Rolf is going to be moving on to the semifinals.
Any card in hand, wouldn't really matter what it is. Throws Chandra over at
He
Christian
could have also
Hauck.
played it.
And there we have it. That is enough to make it so that John Rolf very safe in the semi-finals of Pro Tour Ixalan. Great work from the team Metagame Guru's Moon player. We will see more of him. And this has been some pretty nice quarterfinals that we've seen thus far. Of course, 2 different variations on Teamer Energy that we've seen. Both of them, though, struggling a little bit against the decks with that knew that was the #1 target.
Yeah, 4 energy decks in the top 8, 2 down. So only 2 left.
We will see how the next 2 fare soon enough. We've got our next set of quarterfinals for you very, very soon. But stay with us. We will be back very shortly after these messages.